Japan can retain ally cooperation, counter-terror. Chris 11, our friends rejected the response outside the theater of active armed competent countries, also to cooperation countries. Share intelligence, provide evidence, transfer terrorists. We want to help with our allies. We can work with them. With our experts provoke our questions about the rule of law. We risk losing moral authority that makes it hard to get cooperation easy for terrorists to find recruit. But to terrorists to recruit, we respect legal rules to provide the support for the even would be counterproductive for partners of law enforcement. While we in those two with ally cooperation, key to do effective drone use. Sanko 13 at their Bush, no about receive blanket permission transit Algeria news. If the U.S. receive flyers of available to secure base hard drones cannot be launched required from naval platform safe. Routinely training use military activity. Also, complete discretion there. Airspace flying drones required counsel behind the scenes of publicity and basing agreements can win a drone where what types of aircraft they can fly. Denial of reference and powerful to drones, all safe havens, prevent attack in the United States. Johnson 12 when military leaders are killed in an attack. Decrease terrorist escape too soon. The outcome the favor of the government drones have advantages of costly endurance and lack of parties minimize unhinged casualty drone program as the prevented numerous attack historical rescues decapitation with organizations building conduct major attacks on the U.S. Central leader has scattered with a little bit to communicate or move in loud leadership to use counter made the already organization difficult. The USDT has demonstrated effectiveness drones that made it difficult to reconstitute safe haven drones are operationally effective and if alternatives are worse than establishing clean strike policy solves criticism by 13. Drones are done to drop kill key leaders denying sanctuary. Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia drones are devastating all kind of the view of civilian casualty turn from the 50. U.S. cannot tolerate safe haven. The drones attack targets in the areas of Washington spell out clear rules so that regimes have hard time 20 U.S. adjustment political drones have killed operatives that include senior studies or replace rise of lower leadership non-experience pro-nigger drones eliminate operatives of both schedules drones that are cuts areas ability to recruit train leaders not get more than 8 command drones have turned the command structure into a liability. Alternatives are realistic give you in war zones around the country breasting militants is highly dangerous. Drone strike violates sovereignty less than boots on the ground marching all campaign drones create some other blast of decreasing casualty drones reducing the odds of we have the kill zone for using drones for less money than asking allies. You want terrorists in Pakistan, military torture, detaining securely bound civilians, new terror likely continuing vigilance is key dial. 13 actions need to prevent military the militants required Lieutenant Mary Chief. Progress has been made, but announced that radical groups to build a crude nuclear bomb and mono. Warning against a false sense of nuclear terror. Most of them contradictions that's involved nuclear material reporting every year. All kind of still able to trying to obtain new nuclear material despite trying to remain dismantled core. We should be here to try to continue trying station Hellman. A nuclear terrorist will be catastrophic events or worse likely to attack is also to meet the national security events found that attack involving nuclear explosion occurring in the next 10 years. Terrorism is the mechanism for nuclear civilization will be nuclear explosion could pressure nuclear weight in the reason home savings from the limited nuclear deficit climatic consequence preventing World War III is a necessity. Advantage 2 is norms global proliferation of drone capabilities and level of the planet establishing norms of restraint use of global robbers. 13 proliferation of drone tech is well beyond the control of the United States. 75 countries have aircraft at 15 inches building 1,000 types of tech is noble and to make president for the applications by the United States. Obama has used executive power to ignore requests by congressional overseas and resist and moderate by the courts outside. Use of drones outside the traditional battlefield is given green light to play aircraft and territorial operation that could be destabilize the entire region. Iran and Syria, Russia, and Ukraine, Turkey. They go Kurdish in Tehran, Moscow, now we're all point to watching what goes on discussed Washington filters have clear rules for itself that would create global province interrelating between legitimate and rogue cases. What happens when strikes in the SES or the Indian use the aircraft to strike Kashmir and states to use lethal force without that better can lead to wider escalation. The allow for low threats will leave the force outside of the borders by keeping the legal position secret press in the game. They will also just struck people will find that hypocritically the administration lines on AUM on Afghanistan and Pakistan is dodging White House is not interested in the change the way we communicate strike policy to ensure the programs are off the table. The administration is not prepared to set the rules on the technically of instability around the world. Time is running out with the window of opportunity to create a pressing quickly landing a policy with practice will go line towards establishing America might find help in an argument against other states acting or establishment particularly in countries even when other agreements have shown its access to trade weapons including mines, militias and nuclear bomb houses use nuclear military capabilities that influence how other states use them. There has geographic restrictions from Congress are key to successful legal framing. Brooks 13 drones pose significant challenges existing legal drones making use far easier for the use to expand the battlefield with drones or use outside the battlefield to use challenges existing legal framing to policy on the verge of doing significant damage to the rule for outside the battlefield fields is different toward the war and all kids open and that is all the administration or the assertions are not false but the law we have no longer the clear basis for depending on how to categorize US TKs other the states will file America is the other results now that can be we should use it to opportunity to advance a robust legal framework for handing every request of state that America had to foment its ability. The result has the potential to disable shifting clear regime if the U.S. executive branch is however Turkey allows U.S. President Turkey DTA collapse negotiation Erdogan's presidency Stein 13 Erdogan has incentive to so he doesn't go for his constitution Erdogan's alliance with the MPH and allied Turkish liberals who are keen on implementing EU reforms that the behavior of the majority of Turkish supporters institutions would give him credibility. The AKB is seeking about the UK negotiators need to appeal the national AKB is given incredible ability to see the set Turkish political agenda Ankara has opted out to follow Washington, for example, using drones Turkey, build a surveillance or taking armed charges against PK operative for the Turkish government to public and direct to build trust with the Kurdish minority other ways to reignite the conflict. Erdogan can tap the permanent stable of the Turkish strength with support from the national prepare the rhetoric with a clear articulation of Turkey's drone policy goes way to liberals and Kurds the balance of the political sides. Man, the key to the Turkish model solves Middle East instability. Kershi 13. Many leaders point to Turkey's model for guiding the Middle East. The Turkey's ability to target help evolve itself and reaches boot analysis very late. Turkey's ability to resolve the Kurdish problem began to be seen as a weakness in gender fusion critical Turkey's potential for Turkey's model of the Middle East will depend on Erdogan. Erdogan must maintain its credibility. Courts of action difficult to see how Turkey would manage the zero price of the alternative would be to revitalize Turkey's democratic credentials about the current course of action be driving Turkey to turmoil instability terror Kishin and French nuclear Snyder 11 we could be on the first another conflict between Syria and Turkey is very likely tension at all time high the Middle East is between Syria and Turkey military force amazing one side to set off a war the Turkey's a member of NATO would go to war with Syria is really on the rounding but set by a watch world would Russia and China set by conflict in the Middle East is set off a war 3 Middle East war goes nuclear Russell nitrogen stability under my mind I say the active deterrent relation make a bargain and stable lack of communication framework civil addresses easily imagine a scenario in which a complicated quickly escalating regionally taken to consider the use of nuclear weapons. It would be a mistake to believe that nuclear taboo can keep weapons from being used once the war starts to advance. Would develop momentum, drones, cause China Sea conflict, U.S. precedents, keep voting 13. Chinese aerospace orders develop UAV. China's attack is maturing rapidly in the because of widespread use for combat. Chinese food displays military sophistication and challenge US in the Pacific and all because they elevate the threats of neighboring territories via China's. These drones get added to the concern that lack of international reconciliation for targeting Chinese following the presence set by the United States down China and East China Sea drones. Maybe soon to be appearing over the Japanese controlled ECS islands and the Kachur potential SES conflict cost exchange winter 11 gathered tension between US and China with US recently challenging technology in South China Sea and were not necessarily their signs that could be cargo war between India and Pakistan and could should give it a nuclear attack by China would be least telecommunications with the reviews of radioactive related debris and a lot of the summer the nuclear winter around the globe. Senkaku conflict also Constitution Baker 12 China is nationalistic China which Japan have values rally right China were to attack or would involve a nuclear deaths and would escalate to a massive human rights nuclear follow defectation. The West, the best scholarship validates our theories of arm races, less norms, proceed our informal agreements will be ineffective for early 11. A drone race is a result of the use of drones in the CT by the U.S. A norm of drone usage developing and how the U.S. decided to deploy drones to China, Russia, and Cuba deploy drones against similar any arm races which has happened because they are embedded in political dynamic. China, Russia pursued drones before the U.S. They are pursuing capability vigorously because the U.S. geomantic present effects a policy extended characterized now display has been driven by use of behavior. The U.S. sees our restriction warfare as its advantages likely to do so global outreach may not be enough to make the U.S. budget arms races. Our direct outcome state policy of behavior the U.S. right now structuring how the world will use it. We'll use drones. The United States government should restrict executive authority for targeted killing as a first resort outside zones of active hostilities. Solvency. Tactical administration policy delays be geographic zone our legal justification wherever it remains in place to work in. 13. The administration policy is contrary efforts and individual significant and threat to made by representing the drill programs of article mark about continues as having expansive press and damaging the international rule of law. U.S. military officials said the end of their armed conflict was long way. If it might be 20 years, Obama said a regulation outside the year for activity lethal and force willing to capture not people know other reasonable alternatives exist. There are no. These stands remain unclear. Nevertheless, they represent a meaningful change in focus when the administration had the practice with the people have the greatest threat. This is now official policy standards are significantly more restrictive than the law. The new policy endorses self-defense and the de facto basis for U.S. strikes. The levels of attacks are diminishing on new guns and Geneva represent a poly rather than an obligation. The assertion that the U.S. might lawfully kill any member of the opposing force when they were found remains in place as expressed for other states. Limiting the use of force as a first resort is critical to disable consensus building and targeted killing data task goal. 13. The zone approach fails the ideologue it offers a set of standards with legitimate and legitimized targeted killing. This approach confines the use of battlefield targeted killing in extraordinary situations that limit the use of force as a first resort. The zone approach ensures that states can respectively counter the adopting the framework of law. The U.S. can set the standards building international consensus rules allowed to apply to conflicts. Only congressional action on the scope of hostilities is a clear signal the U.S. abides by the law of armed conflict. Anderson. 10. The U.S. needs a public legal rationale to be concerned to defend that international community. The U.S. legal rationale to do hit counter the use outside the zone of conflict. China has Congress is available to inserting legality as if in the courts of the U.S. The international community. Their two political branches are united. The strategy for strategic rationale for targeting leaders overrowing the border regions which fighting has failed to justify the law of armed conflict. The justification choice the U.S. will take the fight to the end outside the traditionally conceived zone of hostility. Armed conflict counts under the laws of wars defined and limited by the presence of hostility. Armed conflict exists only in particular republics. Silence on the legal legitimate targeting killing places not. Obviously, battle space is increasing harmony. Future presidents will still have their sound public firmly asserted legal defenses, including their limits and lines. Congressional restrictions key to credibility and signal. Anderson 9. The U.S. would be best to serve if Obama did get the U.S. in front of the issue by taking a complaint American issue rather than reacting over real moves and ambiguities for further so the important issue for Congress and insisting America understanding vital on the issue is legitimate opinion congressional strength behind the executive branch essential for Congress to place supported Obama as the speak of the single voice of the world. America has to speak loudly if we should be heard. Continue to squeeze all forms of this target. The law of conflict is a compelling and certainly not practicable. War is a deformation of hostilities, and the plan is a useful exercise in the national security decision-making skills of Donahue. 13. Simulations bridge a gap between theory and practically creating alternative future reality. Would be able to legal source of two secret agencies or responsibility for results simulation, but for the national security realm to live the fact the incident does not take place. It can be a great advantage. Students can make it be a great advantage. Can be great, I guess. Up to the word great.
I stole their jump drive. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, your Kuris and Zenko evidence mentions situations between Ethiopia and Zenko and those in those areas about how drone policies there have been limited to certain areas of what we determine enemy. My question is, how does the U.S. determine what an enemy is, and how does U.S. drone policy currently determine who to target?
The current U.S. policy is an executive branch decision to target people who pose an imminent threat to the United States. That's based on the authorization for use of military force. The Obama administration has chosen a rather expansive interpretation of that. So
how does the plan change that?
It limits where he can conduct strikes to areas of...
how does Congress determine where they conduct strikes?
Well, he can determine... Well, Congress doesn't determine anything. It just restricts the legal authority for Obama.
So how does Congress determine what an outside zone of active hostility is, which is what your plan text talks about?
Congress doesn't determine that. First, the plan doesn't define that either. It's something that is already defined. Our Dworkin evidence says that Obama functionally uses this standard, but it's not codified, which is important. The zone of active hostility is functionally wherever there's fighting, but that's something, the exact zone is something that Obama and his national security
All right, let's talk about your Farley evidence. It states, rather to the extent that any regulation of drone warfare is likely, it will come through the treaties limiting how drones are used. Such a treaty would require either a deep concern on the part of major powers advancing drone capabilities threaten to their interests and survival, or widespread revulsion among global public against practice drones.
Yeah.
How does your F resolve
and
or create a treaty?
The part where you didn't read says that the global outrage won't make the U.S. budge.
Yeah, the
treaties
global
won't work. WEAF also resolves global treaties.
I'm pretty sure we're pointing to two separate arguments. This article makes an argument that we have to have a treaty in order to have effective drone use. Correct?
No. The Farley evidence says that non-binding precedents give the United States leverage for those future treaty negotiations.
It's not a treaty, it's a norm.
The norm, I mean, if there is going to be a treaty, which we would contest, the plan is a prerequisite.
Your Hellman impact mentions studies and surveys. What questions were on that survey?
I have no idea, but
who did they survey? 85 experts?
This card.
The Hellman evidence?
It was a national security conference talking about a survey whether they thought...
So this is a bunch of people talking about how...
nuclear weapons.
This is a bunch of people talking about how afraid they are of terrorism, right?
No, it's a bunch of... No, hold on. That's a terrible mischaracterization of that evidence.
All right, let's go to the analysis.
Terror experts deciding whether or not they think an attack...
Let's go to some of the analysis made in the underlined part. Approximately 20 million people died as a result of the First World War. World War II's fatalities were double or triple that number. Chaos prevented more precise determination. In both cases, humanity recovered. The world today has few scars to attest the horror to. Many people, therefore, implicitly believe that a third world war would be horrible but survivable, an extrapolation of the effects of the first two global wars. It's basically saying, here's point A, here's point B, here's point C. Where did they create this model, and where did they get the basis for creating this model?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Assumptions?
You just read a bunch of lines about World War I and II. The point is national
I'm talking about how they construct these scenarios.
Based on national security expertise.
Right. Doesn't seem very excellent.
They constructed scenarios by analyzing, loose nuclear material.
Sounds like you just fit a line where it shouldn't fit. But that's just me, I guess. Did you put it on the flash drive? Or put it on pads? Okay.
It's on the URL.
Oh. Do you guys have a Dropbox also, or do you run everything through this website?
We run everything through it. We have a Dropbox as a backup, but it's been more reliable. Here's your flash drive back.
Thanks. You all have it?
Yeah.
Cool. It's one off. Everyone ready?
First is links. One, the affirmative approach is persuasion from a quantified perspective. This creates false metrics. What we consider success. August 7 is goal oriented activity. Persuasion might only seem useful as actually persuades, although it means fall under the purview of procedure, rhetorical, public policy, games, or persuade them delivered or registered because there's someone who persuades with measure, or we measure the counter policy election, the speeches, posters, ever about attacks, the individual success of the individual attack. All these models of persuasion enjoy the direct access to the subject of persuasion, the core, the aggro, and the private promotion, supportable injection, and child restoration, the lead to conversion provides evidence of persuasion and individual application down of the value of a video game is always laid to public method of measurement commercial games that less for any judgment of save on that market. There's legatory votes or ballots politics to establish policy vision that support political agent or to seek to reproduce such a knowledge to this is unique to debate arguments. All aspects of society quantify. We should analyze rule structures and examine discourse as a measure of success. 7. Assessment involves comparing goals established with the measures of behavior changes. Assessment requires an existing domain capability is compared with desirable behavior assessments of those fundamentally related mission economic turn, social price, education, exchange of the media, demonstration of prior failure leads to social state, visual rejection, economy, political, corporate, and educational institutional rely
find a numerical measurement. We count academic progress by grade level. We count college career by units. And policy newspaper cover golf polls with that numeralized public opinion. Budget figures serve as progress for moral value. For marketing value has become directly correlated to Nielsen's algorithm of viewer share. 3. This is problematic because it convinces us that only measures statistics means the affirm ignores conversation procedures that might or might not lead to success. Blog 7 games attempt to account for their success by psychological, physiological measures, research and develop the game, considering the increase in measure of the control of the player play the game. Parents always assume to correlate numerical systems. The institutions that use theory games opposed such a manner persuasion applies a product of ascendant rapidly to possible procedure returns and also common situations get an name simple logical cooperation opening the possibility for new configurations accounted for such as possible within the primary system. A procedure targets hopes of coach. We need to find another model. Most insurance results like game persistence had nothing to do with the number of plays where those came in conversation of digits game for teacher targets self-digits progress that fail to represent political their competition. The worst student for self attempt to understand our procedure representation cares the outreach. The game the political process have been hijacked by the analysis of planet Thomas criticism begins to trigger the many of its real politics, the religion, warm bodies over policy. Thomas is a president such as is not that he moves a mass and simple human wealth to place policy, but all politicians. Human such as a procedure toward their politics. One mass supports the sport, doesn't more than supports of all main measure. Tom is this already the writer again the incident numeric proof. Rear the horn has we might account for the readers such as such a matter and votes are very critical against politics of real positive Thomas responses will account for the discussion on numerical knowledge but the increasing sophisticated interrogation often sufficient evidence to program for some barriers. We need to consider a game of persuasive failure. The game produces deliberation. This creates three implications. First, value utilized seeking confirmation through quantitative means focuses debate. Extrinsic rewards but examine the game's key to finding intrinsic rewards. McGonagall 11. We have to make our habits. The more we find a habit, the harder it gets. When we make our own habits or we focus on intrinsic rewards, the research take 150 recent college graduates they converted the rates at which graduates the interesting word the research unable to conclusion that extrinsic rewards actually does contribute to some ill-being. It prevents us from engaging autotelic activities that would actually increase our habits. Research covers that every dozen other major studies. Every time we engage in autotelic activity, we put ourselves on consumption acquisition sources of pleasures. We are also developing many external shortcuts, addictive drugs, alcohol, ritual, unhealthy food, and chronic shopping to name a few. As long as we focus on intrinsic, non-extrinsic, what never another for all. Just from making our own habits, we have the biological capability to current habits are hard work. Thanks to consumer popular culture, everyone is believing the same dream of extrinsic, whatever emerging economies are encouraged to continue more and more. They can be doing groups opting out of hardcore games. The games that are the quintessential autotelic activity games that can just satisfy more. This reorientation toward extrinsic rewards that what really had the $3 billion hours a week we spend gaming global evidence and gamers can't say the real life of playing games that actively makes us real life more rewarding. Second is extinction, continuation of the dominant statistical structure lives at every impact. I with our Deployment 2009 games, coding a little bit subject food forces engage players with issues of global event for the pros of structure of the world market or the monopoly of the military industrial complex for simulation tools. Welcome development simulation can take up a sort of envisioning alternative procedure critical discussion default iteration to it first to issue planning cards like global and put it back on the table with the ultra market of the legal era and transfer social planning. With project we counter empower recur more attention to issue to participant or governmental longer the longer term where planning even utopian vision search games with radical lots of country this pedagogy about the game lesson inducing simulation fear which players question the premise of private programming virtual was it could just look at everybody a bit little more where we have the fear of the player the curse of the world is making gamers will be eventually incredibly powerful mechanism for considering the system. Third turns case the affirmed simulation could be confuses the real from simulation. It means we can never know what's real. August 7. Materialism are almost like universal drive. Object rights of simulation of different kind that never procedural repetition of video games. The notion of media, the cultural images will become more than reality. Real than reality. Here, simulation, masquerade, parody, artifice. 2005 just launch of virtual magic kingdom. Upon the virtual magic kingdom, can visit simulation. The real life rights is object that is a kind of consumption of the mystical system of meaning. We have become increasingly cognizant of the phenomenon. Object calls of simulation from consuming increasingly understand the differentiating through evidence and noise reduction strategy. The alternative is to reject the 1AC's approach to simulation, analyzing how the 1AC is coded is key to creating simulation theory. Bog 7. Analysts of conversations, synthetic artifice, produce social scientists, and technological probably clear reforms against desired pedagogical research rather than observation, holistic research who will, as an economy turn into some novel concept accountability, commitment to return that political institution helps over assessment to become even a procedure toward simulation produces simulation for the event itself and never understands the consequence of reinterpreting encourages system to help them from the institution of the structure over the world to produce towards the logic structures that contain the way that we address their systems through transportation once a person procedure or interpretive things to logic no longer makes possible if any ignorance about the logic domains of human conditioning through to promoting video games with making claims about these processors when we play these games, we integrate those claims and incorporate them into our lives and carry them forward in a future experience. They contribute to the way type person each of us becomes. We return to video games or renew our fidelity to the zero procedure. We must organize a persuasive expressive power of procedurality. We choose to recognize the procedure as a new interior our world, disrupt and challenge it. The logic drives our games, make claims about who we are, how we are, what functions, and what we want to become. We promote integrating simulation figures key to imagining alternative neoliberalism. Dire Wolf for Computer in 2009. Games coding illusions of some food force engagement players with issue goal found never the purpose destructive one break eroding and anomaly most such combos is already to me there's things that are defending alternate procedure critical to some of alternate to across the issues planning over actual global warming put on the back of the 10% of the unfitted or only global terrorists attempts for social planning project. Actually I've already read this card. Analyzing procedure, it became the firm's assimilation, a keen understanding, contradiction, engaging criticism. August 7, videos have been isolated advertising of lesser under videos, so here the commission might undermine the fair criticism of advertising. The games might also the very relative to Disneyland became part of less real estate and more of a representation one. So the distance between the virtual and the real design actually puts similar to somebody Disneyland real in a media video advertising persuasion might partly lead to its critique, and this is good for debate. Analyzing the logic structure of the 180 Critics' new persuasion that inspires action of August 7, class equal persuasion, persuasion and privilege of consideration of ignorance of the class of persuasion, hobbling and forces instead of considering the procedure instead of found is repertory events and subjects that purchase error individual no relation basis of a logic system made the single agent persuasive games with the logic simulation and to drop players attention invention side and turn side to problems in the situation video games represents the gap between procedure repetition and individual subject to doing the just right between the simulation the players and understanding to a crisis at this motivates criticism procedure to helps us discern the eventual side of the situation persuasion to relate the player's ability to see understand the simulation of all those players exposed games of logic situation represent professional discourse and opportunities the side of the persuasion procedure to disposal way things more reflection creates and prolongs this process and the determinant is just a weak advertisement procedure toward the 1AC doesn't create a need for reduction of war power. Really just found the nuclear war that will bog us up. Coca-Cola is a part of the commission numerous web-based aggregates. Because they generate aggregates as procedure manifestation, the development of the product produces advertising has become the product behind the actual job of the games and makers of this between the market and the advertising levels when we play the game we experience the actual domain with no Coca-Cola required. This is a fancy simulation over the player conditioning of the argument clones of Coca-Cola makes it about the Coca-Cola strategy from new customer increasing purchase by existing when the one AC's model fails only through procedure retort and the represent our position their model just repeats as school policies. Well, also Ace video games and also you heard to make explicit games of globally mentioned like consistent word the Illinois House Republican Commission gave to represent the position of public policy. The procedures of return for each office says that I covers as much detail as possible rules and develop for the policy office because the ability of the most are bound to what considered by the committee third term intercurrent relation take back eliminated making this sort of each subgame use source as a bit of setting up the games of players not brainwashed or other fool but rather he's important to understand the position for the income agreement and anticipated none of the studies are the policy change the limit sufficient great social change procedure which is not limited to the narrow domain of education or political game and the alternative best way to question neoliberalism within to be mobilizing creating game it's a form of planning for our next step higher with the Putin 2009 world all that the games are exploited echoes and individuals of global capital game culture is crisscrossed by dissident influences from hacking counter globalization wars and ecological actions of games that would tend to be radical and multitude is very form game capital the game capital is a good example of the process and the empire this is a door that swings two ways being incubated cultural system is similar to self-orders cooperative hacker placing able to looking to the future around the global market issue empire decidedly the life and slur cycle by which will recreate themselves despite the building games are now recreation producing personal land by billions of virtual games and revolution of life from the mind of the metaverse and the one is he feels model public policy the only the alternative to understand complexity behind politics and war powers Bogo 6 through procedures for the video games are highly compressed version of the minority experience of both of resistance policymakers creating a body to the public policy issue very different or current legislators are either to make or to detail procedure toward the always grants open to reconsideration of justification or expansion whether through their further procedural models from normal written and spoken discourse video games are promising way to foreground the complexity of political issue without formal layperson political issue or complex systems that recombine and interior the one with another video games afford a new perspective of political issues something especially effective for absolute complex systems.
What is empire?
Domination.
What kind of domination?
Domination structures that happen. When we're talking about empire in that in the context of the book, it's talking about market domination.
Okay, so it's just neoliberalism.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. The all eliminates. Will attempt to eliminate neoliberalism. Just yes, no. You'll defend that neoliberalism is bad.
We'll defend that neoliberalism renders populations invisible, and neoliberalism leads us to focus on bad parts. But we'll also defend that through simulation, if we determine that neoliberalism might be good, we don't preclude solving for that either.
Huh. Okay, I don't think your evidence supports that, but that's interesting.
That's slip of ghost evidence.
Okay, so
that's what procedural rhetoric is about.
All of this evidence seems to be describing the social writ large. Why is any of this about debate?
It talks about the sense of game. Debate is a game to be played.
Debate is a game. Yeah. Other things are games. Why does this apply to debate?
We're saying that debate should be a game like those, and that we should, because debate has many similarities. It has voluntary participation. It has feedback system, much like video games do. Because it does have that, we should analyze procedural rhetorics within debates.
How do you know Tyler and I don't find intrinsic value in debate?
That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, that's what your video gaming good evidence is in the context of. I'm wondering how
I would disagree with that.
How do you know? Your evidence is in the context of intrinsic versus extrinsic values. How do you know we don't get intrinsic value from debate?
We're saying that the activities focus on...
So the activity is bad, but Tyler and I might still get some benefits from it.
Individuals don't really matter. It's about the focus of the simulation of the 1AC and how that leads us to false conclusions about what is good or bad.
Whole bunch of cards you've read seem to indicate that persuasion is very important. How do you know Wit didn't think the 1AC was very persuasive?
We think that the
We
one
need to find a way.
Well,
in
you
which
think
persuasion.
that, but you're not the one making the decision. How do you know Wit didn't find it persuasive?
We think that there should be a new model of persuasion because the
But
current model is
why
broken.
does that preclude the half?
Because
we outline a way in which it's not persuasive.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. So quantitative methods, so like numbers are bad. Just walk me through.
no,
why
not
this
numbers
is
are bad.
really
It's sorry, Matt.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's not numbers are bad. It's that using numbers to calculate the success or failure of a program is bad.
Why?
Numbers are obviously
Where did the AF did that?
what?
Where did the AF do that?
Terrorism leads to extinction. South China Seas.
It's not
All
like-
of that.
That's a number.
That's
It's not a number,
calculating
that's
number. That's
So
quantifying.
calculation is bad. We
We're
should
not.
calculate.
No, we're saying that when you're looking at the success of the 1AC, you should look at the discussions created by the 1AC rather than the numbers created
How
by
do
the
you know that
1AC.
discussion isn't productive?
Sorry, what?
Okay.
Arborgos evidence argues that the discussion of those discussions are what are more productive.
Tyler, the last version was updated.
You made it
So that's one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put it on my chair.
behind you. I don't have space over here.
I can do that after I flash this.
Whoa, your mouse has a lot of buttons on it.
Yep.
Naga?
Yep.
He's compensating for something.
I decided that my 2-button mouse was too complicated and went back to the touchpad.
I think he was talking about the length of the speech.
What?
I think he was talking about the length of the speech.
Oh no, he's talking about the mouse.
I was talking about the mouse.
Okay, I misinterpreted. That's my favorite.
Red highlighting always looks kind of morbid. Red highlighting always looks a little morbid. It's just like, this is wrong. It's scary.
There you go. Sorry.
There you go. Thanks.
Actually, kind of helps. You both have it?
Yeah.
Good bit? Cool.
The rule of the ballot is to simulate the act of the plan. That is the only predictable interpretation. The resolution is key to fairness and grounds. Since anything else moves 9 minutes of the 1AC puts the neg way ahead. Their interpretation is arbitrary and self-serving. There is no logical limit on how the neg could claim to evaluate in the debate. Simulating national security law debates is the best pedagogical approach. It's not disempowering, but it inculcates agency and skills which we learn to use throughout the entire rest of our life. That's the Donahue evidence. I'm going to finish the card from the 1AC. Students can make mistakes and learn without devastating consequences. Simulation, you've experienced how to manage information effectively. Sim, focusing on specific authorities and decision areas. Choose smart advance the country. The substance of the simulation. The simulation for the one size fits all approach. Dominating the education experience approach can start by the great trainer and looking at specific demand simulations. Cure shortcomings in the areas of experiential education simulation. Operators starting point students are given each responsibility of actions. Our method is sound. Debating a specific policy like the AF is crucial. Like implicate decision making. Steinberg in 13 will be pulling this debate to a specific so controversy. Decision markers debate can not produce effective decision about clarifying identification. Question be answered. The controversy best understood when all parties understood the objective of the debate. This enables focus on substantive issues, solely effective decision making, understanding around focus, liberation, poor decision. The proposition provides with focus on discourse, get the positivity on person, but attempt to make a decision, but decision desires are clear what it is about it to be. The proposition provides this guidance, reparation, prior discourse, during the decision made after someone decision or public schools might arrive, be able to do something, our decision would follow if the impress questions follow more probable decision, but by planning the focus on concrete solution, the focus on academic parts better depth argumentation, hands on participation, the placing limits on the decision might make the impossible station be denied. The general subject to brought from a well-organized based system to guide trying to focus on a particular point of distance difference. Decision making is the most portable and flexible skill key to all facets of life. In advocacy, Steinberg in 1320 liberal Bob exhibited opposite live the best second chance American leaders make decision response catastrophic the proposition young couple who created so one way for the loan and software to reach sort of make sure the senior source of school each of these comfort decision making decisions every day of a business as effective decision making to school community and social organization even the choice of information we choose hard decision make the ability to make your decision relies upon our ability to think critically competency and critically crucial prerequisite to effective and human affairs to be unique approach these skills and research converts to essentially for your life determined by our ability to make and influence decision out of mature models to a higher recent method of decision making of decision making. And Debating the law teaches us how to make it better. Rejection is worse. She drink 12 law. It's uniquely open and puts ordinary language more applied response is ever going to will for mercy with social abuse. We can see this autonomous boundaries self-legally defined in a way that affects interaction. This culture is to be seen as attempt to shift the bounds between the separate and major brand reflected these centers. The class identification they exist in entire parts of it. Meaningful parts of the influence of race and reversibility makes this approach marks a sharp critique of bourgeois constitution as such found to represent a law as determined as only the professionals. The subordinate concept of officers cultural inclusion problematic system corporate clearly fashion outcomes. These conflicts and the possibility moves in the direction of the authoritarian concept of power. The power isolation social goes ongoing practice communication revolutionary reconciliation without the force potentially of being able to fully do so. Otherwise, the right feels said low bell set is national rejected is racist. A multiplicity of point is no playing the opposition, not playing everyone else. The operating resignation for law has become a metaphor. Sometimes it's rapidly grown in institutional legal expression for their cause less conception of social change, produces just as legal opportunity. Common factor is to assume counter money to be translated more complete transformation and celebration of micro-resistance rely on an idea they practice development is something more essential fact that to be engaged in a scarcity. Actual like should be a problem. Social movements failed pressing a civic institutional change groups are situated in opposition to institutional forces. They simply mirror what they are voting against it, reducing most sessions to the case that way for specific internal links that they haven't refuted. Drones are key to prevent nuclear terrorist attack on the U.S. Essentially, so war with Russia. They're the only CT platform that is effective. That's Biden. The plan is key to establish norms of rapid use of drones by other countries. As Roberts, otherwise conflict escalates in the Middle East and Asia Pacific from drone miscalculation. The link debate makes no sense. The AF isn't stats unless everything is stats. In which case, what the hell do they do? We consider the AF successful if it solves extinction. If it solves extinction, if doing that is bad, then we impact turn that. And the alt is terrible since it allows the entirety of humanity to die. They have no explanation of what the AF ignores. The plan is sufficient to solve that taskful. We can have a better explanation of this and interrogate it, but they need to make case arguments in order to do that. Perm do the plan and all non-mutually exclusive parts of the alternative. Whatever statistics or simulation types of the AF reject, don't overwhelm the idea that the plan is good. We shouldn't be forced to defend all of the status quo. Debate only the AF. The judge can vote if the AF was interesting or if it was interesting or persuasive, which is a subjective interpretation of his speech. If they claim to solve the AF, then perm do the alt, since we only used to defend the plan and reject alts are bad. They have a funny conceal the entirety of the AF, which cautions fairness and moves the one I see. The impact debate, the dire impact is stupid and not about debate games. We link term this because decision making teaches us skills to resolve all of the problems that dire indicates, and we don't confuse simulation with reality. Zizek to K. If we are to surrender virtual vibe, we have to rely on marks which clearly design to deal with official let ourselves enjoy a value where we somehow have to think we are seeing in a state where we want to dissociate the other than to establish symbolic factor fully persistent mode, just validly being aware that this is not real life. Life is always valuable towards it too. Person is not based on any specific capacity upon privacy, investment, intention, divine person is considering the attributes flies in the face of death. The person is about to do so and having illogical porphyries or fake someone by the self-the-other reference to reality revolution of one standard core inner self-transcending specific action. The evil mind possessed intimacy is grounded in a recognition of this character is brother the simple and qualified presence of the part of what the person is. Value life is also subjective. Andy and I get value from debating the way that we do, which means that they can reject that util is key. Harry's 94 and politics yes respond to reality of absolute necessity probably become always with confident once they enter the realm of politics rights have to take the place higher arguments including national security prosperity no responsible government to treat them as overriding. Neolib solves war guards key 7 wars upon of intimate interest peace interest when they say lack difference of constantly got the resource competition margin to through markets and military occupation lacking territorial tension liberal states to cooperate the rise of global capital markets create new mechanisms for competition. They explain the absence of war among states in the developed world if they reject neoliberalism and the permutation cannot solve. That means they reject the AF, which means the entire 1AC is an impact turn. Quality of life is skyrocketing worldwide by all measures. Ridley in 10 since 1800 population multiplied 600 life is doubled real income to 9 times the average human was less likely to die as a result of war, murder, childbirth, accidents, flooding, malaria, flooding, famine, malaria, polio, most likely to generate far from being rationed by the population conserves that attending break down the world into it's hard to find any region is worse off. The rich have gotten rich, the poor through consumption twice as fast as the world around the decided doubling of population raw number and absolute poverty has fallen. Cap solves disease. Norberg 3 capitalism enables us to use property as they see fit. The Bill Gates the very personification of modern capitalist fund $1.4 billion wanted to introduce communities developing corns around the world said game over the handful of cases the whole Europe and another couple of WHO's extinction 2 list 9 disease had shaped the planet side is called the big one off with terrifying new virus through these species we can't be facing new apocalypse history teaches the greatest danger of human race is not some crackpot but a 6 gene virus can wipe out the global population door to be serious scientists that identify the virus travel halfway across the world. The alternative can't eliminate statistics throughout society because they aren't because statistics are efficient. That's why they developed and that's why they're used in the first place. Their action is incoherence is rejecting the plan obviously spills over to nobody. Method focus causes paralysis. Jackson 11 falsification transforms into placement where they list your foundational to focus on consistent subject rights and complex empirical constituent resultant solely for said they evaluate research principles for the purpose of making sure they have all of the required to substantial injuries starting points disclosure of possibility and something instructed laws from the ground up by getting its foundational logical order concentrated in the world. Predictions and scenario building are valuable for debate by making even if they're not perfect stats are good. Garrett 12 very different to me we should have been offered to foresee disruptive change most do not come out of the blue. We can understand projection rates that we can continue alternative futures like the world would and would include a nuclear terrorist need to go back to the terrorist or virus government is trying to plan for these catastrophes are useless as GDP and one is manufacturing that can alter the trajectory. The uncertainty about the future means that the future is inevitable. To stress understanding inevitable surprises is critical for decision we have to make today. We may not be able to find capacity. We can increase our ability to respond. The 1AC is an exercise in scenario planning. The decision-making benefits of considering multiple alternative futures is good regardless of the veracity of the content. Georgetown 7 scenarios, 7 evaluation by different possible context development may be tested. Thinking hard money and not formulating dramatic responsibility can illustrate principles that would be lost if one in set example from the Roman Bells may consider alternative outcome scenarios or tools in which one this is to be played out after, but it was impossible that both by the was left I'm mentally unprepared for the future. The complexity arguments are wrong. It's possible to predict the future, and anything else destroys policy making and hegemony. Not hegemony, just policy making. Gork as well. We live in a complexity, so we are told to use this sound person and complexity seen in this dangerous sense, but choose a political work actually something in future implications of complexity permeate today's documents. The challenging speculation because they are empirically unfounded to indicate their strategy to make the realization of American national interest possibly a question whether the world has ever seen as simple feeling no star person and complexity descriptively false. The idea is dangerous. The idea is dangerous. Their theory of simulation is non-falsifiable. Hughes in a knife and boat future red deviation started to simulate current denies possibility experience anything except illusion both schemes only hypothesis despite confidence which have not a very consistent when people are sophisticated reality. The box here capable of the people around the world of apocalypse new generation voting government have none of it what is worse both of absolutism nihilism or disdain for empirical sense. Still yes we talk political best bad of substance but Baudrillard puts a straight rejection of accelerating simulation as a nostalgic longing for a mythic past evolves into scapegoating authoritarianism Smith and for the theory has happened explored democratic possibilities to more possible to negotiate democratic with it accelerated tempo modern life and is of the world down the essence of the world down is almost certain to develop and church to escape the held responsibility rapid peace of life can be derailed insularity threatens democratic ways the early main transformed by politics sufficiently into the positive roles to democratic speed the compression is the accelerated tempo law may carry possibilities for reinventing and generating those of negotiation. Yeah. Good. Process.
Yeah. Alright, you ready?
Yep.
First off, let's start off on the 1AC scenario planning good. What is inherently good about how the 1AC or the affirmative is creating these scenarios, I guess?
Simulation or creating the scenarios to justify the
scenario
simulation?
planning itself.
I mean, everything is probably scenario planning at some point, because in order to justify anything, you need to say that it's good because X instance. We think that scenario planning is valuable because it helps us predict the future, even if they're imperfect. You can use some models to reduce uncertainty. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but...
All right. I have a question about your Donahue evidence.
Yep.
The underlined part points to a simulation based on 5 or 6 storylines reflecting interstices between different areas of law. The storylines present a nonlinear scenario that can adapt to student responses.
Can you tell me how far down the card that is?
It's in the 5 text area.
5 text area.
It's pretty far down on the card. I'm just wondering, how is your AF that same type of simulation that it's talking about being good? How's your
it's a scenario prediction. It's based off of multiple different storylines.
How is this descriptive of what your AF does?
You're right. It's not exactly descriptive of
that,
but it's talking about a scenario planning,
the simulations it talks about are different cases where they make different decisions on the standpoint of jurors.
Of a case.
Really?
You're right. This is about law, but we think it definitely applies to the F.
I think this is describing a scenario that our Vergos evidence says we should look at. Why is this?
We think that the app is also one of those that you should look at. I don't think you just haven't made a very good distinction yet. We'll see in the 2NC.
Okay,
but I don't think there's a difference.
Let's go to your Gorka et al. 2012 evidence. The first card you read under complexity. Mm-hmm. This one guy, or I guess these 1 or 2 people, are chilling out and saying, "We challenge the declarations of complexity." Why should we prefer what these 2 people are saying over multiple authors indicating complexity good?
I mean, we have multiple authors, too. That's kind of a semantic claim. One, they're pretty qualified. They're Director of Homeland Defense Fellows Program and Teachers of Irregular Warfare and National Security. Hey, at Georgetown. That's pretty qualified. But also, they make some pretty persuasive arguments. If everything is so complicated that we can never predict anything, what's the point of it? If we can never figure out how things cause each other, why do we do anything? That causes paralysis. The Jackson evidence is an impact.
Where does it indicate that? I'm looking for where he says the reasons that complexity are bad. It just says complexity.
They are empirically unfounded. They negate strategy and make the realization of natural interests impossible. The world may never have been that simple, but revealing the notion of unprecedented complexity is descriptively false. Make what impossible? I already explained the link to this. If the argument from complexity is that it's impossible to make any predictions because everything is just so interconnected that we can't figure it out, then it's impossible to make any decision because we never know what's affecting what. So we just sit on our hands and say, well, we hope it turns out all right. We reject that.
Same stuff. Virus rejecting.
I'm guessing we're going to do that. I think it's more of that.
That'll be in the overview. So that'll be easy. I'll talk about down here. So you need to. I'm good to go. If I can get this in the right order. Yeah. I think it just got uploaded.
Yep. Thanks.
Oh, here we go.
So how much back do you guys have left?
3:16. I think I started at 10. I actually don't want that's in his house. It's the K. Don't think there will be a long overview. I'll try to go straight down. They're confusing what the word simulation is. What Begos talks about simulation. Begos talks about understanding procedural record behind simulation or analyzing the code behind what you see. That doesn't mean looking at the impacts. That means looking at the internal links and assumptions made what you see, which is something they conveniently forget when they're talking about nuclear war. And they haven't proven why the legal structures and why those specific drone structures are a good idea. Means that there's no reason to vote after you vote negative on presumption because they haven't proven under procedural record their persuades. It's the alternatives to analyze the procedural record. Actually, I think that changed. I'll go back to that on the alternative debate. The apps. I already talked about that. Skip 2EC 1 through 3. That'll be in the 1ER. Go to 4 and 5. Screw those. Those are both political arguments. We'll talk about simulation here. We're not a postmodernism critique where the advocates doing nothing. We're a criticism of the main structure and how we approach it. We say we should analyze the procedural rhetoric of the 1EC. We can analyze the procedural rhetoric of policy structures and past policies. Those procedures are good. What I mean by analyzing procedural rhetoric is analyzing the internal links and analyzing these assumptions. I pointed out a few assumptions in cross-section the one you see that I think are a little suspect, which we talked about in the link debate, but we're not saying that you should do nothing. We're saying that you should reject the 1AC because the procedural radical of the 1AC proves that it's a bad idea. They say case out ways. I'll do the impact debate here. One is Empire. Empire leads to mobilization of war, leads to transnational corporations that ignore environmental regulations, leading to ecological collapse, and leads to seasons because we bioengineer our own death in the name of profit. This outweighs the aftermath because ecological collapse and disease are the only things that lead to extinction of nuclear war. Survival as analyzed by their helmet evidence means that you prefer high magnitude impacts, and will contextualize the impacts in terms of the drone sections show hopes of villages. No one even blinks. These populations become visible and helpless in the face of U.S. policy. Elsewhere in 2012, civilian homes in impoverished areas were destroyed by airstrikes. When they hear a plane, I immediately run to the house. Said 70-year-old Ahmed. Drones have been counterproductive because with these casual military groups are gaining war numbers. The attacks have negative impacts on psyches of children who are hearing it. It's America that is killing you. No, you have pride and courage to fight it. Despite great violations against citizens, the government is ignored civilians. Despite the high number of civilian casualties, leading politicians and activists not advocate on their behalf. While the leave side asks the young boy, "Where do you want to be when you grow up?" The boy answers with utter silence. See, he doesn't have a dream. It's a child that has no dream. We are in a country. We're in a country with no hope, which means they destroy value life on a great level because they destroy hopes villages when they're advocating more germ policies. They point to statistics where drones might be successful. Forget who they actually kill. Their evidence talks about the Obama administration focusing on reducing civilian casualties, but what should really be talked about in drone policies is that where one civilian casualty is unacceptable. We should look at those policies and analyze whether or not it's a good idea. Go to 2EC6. I'll do the link. I'll do the link debate here. The one makes a few arguments. One says the affirmative's quantified approach is not persuasive. It just convinces us that something is a good idea because it avoids something. The affirmative is about why avoiding nuclear war is bad, not why drones might be good or bad. What we take away from it isn't education about drone policy or intricacies of drone policy. What we take away from it is ways to avoid nuclear catastrophe. Don't make any decisions on drones or simulate what drones do, meaning that you vote negative on such shit because the affirmative is not proving that are a good idea. Two, see the affirmative make simulations that fails to inspire action. If you draw down a flowchart, it's just one decision one way, one decision another way, with a bunch of bad stuff on one side. Obviously, you're going to pick the other side. You don't actually get to understand why you're picking that side, why you're picking that process. If you were to model this in computer simulation, it'd be a very simple loop and a very simple three lines of code, meaning that it's not something that really understands policymaking. This is the problem with plan-based debating, problem with fiat-based debate, because it creates illusions so that we're solving problems when we're not really understanding intricacies of the affirmative, intricacies of the drone policy. Three, look at how empty their simulation is. Let's look at the first piece of song. They point out to one specific action, but about Congress would exclude congressional oversight mechanisms that should be strengthened. Congress should be considered legislation to clarify once and for all the covert use of force is lawful under U.S. international law of self-defense. C, Congress should strongly encourage the administration to follow the public position directly. This means that the blind text is wrong action is just a simulation for the sake of simulation. If it fails to create simulation fever, which is what our dire white for evidence states is necessary to reject actualism. What simulation fever really indicates is that when we look at simulation, we analyze alternatives. Again, they've rigged the game so much in one direction that you have no choice but to pick it. Meaning that the simulation isn't truly effective. Doesn't really create portable skills. And the Brooks evidence starts from the wrong standpoint. A few portions that they don't underline show more complex actually. 5. The structure of the 1C is just a poor simulation. Here's the extent of what you get from their game. Public is backlash against drone. After leads to good use. Solves terror. Terror is bad. The other advantage isn't any better. Drones are proliferating now. That's bad. The way it solves. They talk about legal discussions. They don't engage in that legal discussion in 1AC. They just present. They just present some impacts. You should focus on the internal links. And why do we even need to jump to the biggest impact possible? There's structure of 1AC. Blackmail's. Actually, I've said that a few times. The structure doesn't give you choice. It only says you should vote AF because a bunch of bad stuff's going to happen. Permutation will be in the 1 and R. They say vote AF if you think it's persuasive. A lot of the K proves why it's not persuasive. They say floating pigs are a voting issue. The alternative isn't floating pigs. It's rejection of a 1AC simulation. We've pointed out a few reasons why it's bad and why it destroys value of life. They say dire right first isn't. They say they don't confuse reality. We're not going for the Boucher portion of the critique. They say life always has value, but there's a difference between life having value and we're us creating value from our own life. When we're looking at this activity and whether or not we gain extrinsic or intrinsic value, when we're looking at simulations of the affirmative, we don't gain extrinsic value. We gain something from a numbers game. We gain some kind. We convince ourselves that kind of victory is enough. We keep seeking it. We don't gain actual education about intricacies of Jones policy to 1AC, which means that you reject it because it destroys value life in debate and destroys the reason why a reason to participate in debate in the first place. They say it's rejected because they think it's good. That's an interesting opinion, but I think it's bad. But I think it's bad. So you should vote negative, which is the extent of the self-serving nature of their argument. They say util is good, but we are util. We saw Empire and claim to solve extinction. We also saw the greatest good for the greatest number of people because we reveal invisible casualties that policymaking conveniently ignores in order to continue a certain agenda. They say cap's good because they say cap's good, but one extent of dire right here they seem to conveniently forget about ecological crisis cause. These are just statistical. These are again just statistics about why wars might have decreased in recent time, but they don't really take into account what started the wars in the first place and motivations. Obviously, neoliberalists aren't going to say that wars happen to them. They're going to find different solutions. It means that you should view their evidence suspect. They say quality of life increasing. I don't know what this means in context of the debate. This is probably also a link because it's pointing quantifications. Economics are getting better and poverty is decreasing, but there is still poverty. Poverty should be unacceptable. It's where a value life argument argument's talking about. They claim mission accomplished when they see a number decrease, but they don't understand people falling beneath the cracks, which is what our impacts really talking about. They say they solve disease, but I already talked about that in the impact debate. They say we eliminating statistics is impossible. Our alternatives about discussing the internal links and prioritizing that instead of the impacts of the 1AC. We look at intricacies of drone policy instead of jumping to conclusions. We look at whether it's a good idea to take a certain action, and we look at those consequences. Their Donahue evidence is great at pointing out what the affirmative should be, which is a simulation with many different scenarios, many different outcomes of those scenarios, not necessarily leading to nuclear conflict, but leading to whether something is accepted or rejected in U.S. policymaking. They say methods focus good. I don't know how we link to this. We're looking at the internal link of the affirmative, not the methodology of the affirmative. I'll take some prep. The last three arguments, they say complexity destroys hegemony. We never stated complexity in the 1AC. They say Beaujard fails and all that. We kick that.
Good?
Yeah.
Like 10 seconds, please?
Yeah.
A couple of times we need a deep investigation of the app. We pointed out a couple of things in our solvency evidence that were alternative proposals. Why didn't you read them as counterplans or read disadvantages to the app?
Because those counterplans and disadvantages to the app focus on the wrong portions. We could have read the solvency arguments, and that begs the question of what do you weigh it against, right? That's the same type of simulation. Sure, it points to it in the other area, but our argument is that it's too simplistic. When you try to code the 1AC, or imagine the code of the 1AC, it's 3 lines. It's some flowchart that's this simple.
No, I understand. So the main reason for that is, we only get 9 minutes to speak, right?
No, the reason for that.
Let me finish. I haven't asked a question.
Okay.
A deep analysis of the 1AC would require a very deep investigation of drone policy, hundreds of hours of research going into it. I assume you would agree with this, yes?
Understanding drone policy, yeah, sure.
Okay. So why doesn't the incentive structure of debate, which says that we need to present an app, but you have to do all of those hours of research analyzing policy first solve that?
Because these issues aren't discussed in debates. When a judge evaluates a debate in the status quo, they look at the impacts and weigh them, and that proves whether the plan's a good idea.
The way we have gotten to those impacts is through hundreds of hours of research on policy and what is the best way to effectuate them. I've done probably several hundred hours of research on drone policy, and we got a 20.
And I've done several hundred hours of research on why persuasion is failing.
Why do you present any of the reasons why drones are bad in the literature, like civilian casualties? I understand
We
you
did.
have one card, backlash specific countries, whatever it may be, a different policy to do drones.
Because again, this is focusing on the ends rather than the means.
Okay, but why isn't a counterplan focusing on the means?
Because the purpose of a counterplan is to say, we cross off your FF from your side of the equation and we have some type of net benefit.
How do we weigh your argument about people who we map over and become invisible against the app?
Sorry, what?
How do we weigh your always your card against the app? How do we determine which one is more important?
You determine that
this is more important?
the point of the argument is to show that drone policy isn't all that good. The point of the argument is showing that you take assumptions.
But how have you decided that it's not all that good?
Well, we've shown that, one, the procedures taken behind drone policy aren't necessarily good, and those procedures are more important than certain nuclear wars that might happen, or certain other extinction scenarios because terrorists might get some type of nuclear device.
What would you like debate to look like?
Sorry, what?
What would you like debate to look like?
I would like debate to be a discussion about simulations, a discussion
Is there
about.
a winner and a loser?
Sure.
Do we present a plan?
You can, but it has to be something different from what you do now. It has to be something that's more. It has to be something that can't be simplified to 3 lines of code.
No, I actually want to keep taking a little bit of time to figure this out. So presumably plans would be very long things like a bill or something like that. Yes, no.
No.
Longer than 3 lines, the 1AC would be a plan.
No,
What
I think
else would be in the 1AC?
the 1AC would have discussions of drone policies.
The
If we're
1AC
talking
does
about
have a discussion of drone policy.
the 1AC's discussion of drone policies is reduced to impacts. If you look at the relative weighing of the 1AC,
links have the rest of the drone policy. What would the apps look like? Would it just be internal links?
It would be analyzing the procedure. So, yes, we look at desirability
So
of
what would
internal
the negative
links.
say?
The negative would say that your procedures are bad.
How? Through what means? Would it be
They point out simplifying assumptions that maybe don't
so
fit.
every debate would just be the negative, pointing to different things in the affirmative.
Yes, every debate would have you thinking like an engineer,
How do we
looking at
determine-
simplifying assumptions of the equation and
How do
figuring
we
out why
determine
those
which
assumptions
side is
don't work. Sorry.
How good does the affirmative simulation have to be in order for you to vote out?
The affirmative simulation has to be a reasonable explanation of the world. We say that the
Reasonable explanation for all right.
They have to be reasonable.
I used a minute and 5 seconds.
Okay.
Can you put your...
Yeah, I'll take this over.
It's going to be the bottom of the flow, and then framework at the top, then the verb debate. Yeah.
The arguments of essay would be in the one.
Yeah.
Can you just say that one more time?
Yeah, basically the bottom arguments really quickly won't take long, and then up to framework, and then firms.
Okay.
Sorry, that's what it's on the website.
Yeah, it's up on pads.
Yeah.
Let's put this away.
Both of y'all have it?
2 seconds.
1, 2.
It was 2 seconds.
That's beautiful.
I promise.
That's pretty good.
Alright.
First off, on complexity theory arguments, we don't have a complexity theory type of complexity theory analysis there that they say is bad. They also read the Baudrillard argument. We're not going to go for Baudrillard on framework.
Already kicked it.
On their roll of ballot argument, they say simulating acting. However, our roll of ballot in the case is a prerequisite to this type of simulation. I will get more of that below, but they say predictability, unpredictable is inevitable policy to be incentivized upside advantage prior towards your ground produces the ability to be caught off guard for substantive impacts. Our arguments precursor determine the quality of the ground that lose go around this point is produce a useless discussion which we can never solve problem. This does result to debate education. They say education about God is good at indicating how verbal arguments are not enough to present solution that we need to have better types of simulation to represent arguments our interpretation and not self-serving arbitrary. It's an unsolid electron for a way to solve debate. They say security law is good. However, even if a simulation of this form is good, bad simulations of this form, even if this type of simulation about this is good, bad simulation about that is bad. They say specific policy heat education about this where we have a fundamental difference interpretation. We will have a plan it's not necessarily probably counter education what you want. We defend that we should use simulation in the video games way to discuss actions that we should have been taking then to become the center point of the debate instead of a plan of various events that usually contradict in some way. You should vote for our role debate. You should vote for the team that best interpret the procedure of of the one AC or prefer interpretation, one value life DA prioritizing plan based debates in the way for focusing debate and quantification because of why we prefer the plan this focus debate on demonstrating secret rewards meaning we don't agree my habits for the debates and since they get confirmation from numerous game 2 procedures check all boards of politics or analysis is key to understanding policy making bogus of another procedural law or often closely tied courts and law enforcement agencies by procedures to how action cannot be carried to procedure or sometimes I really ideology they can allow their ability to see other ways that they don't matter if this is a question about the pro see just the strap military practice with this or the practice to culture to the method used to carry procedure because of the type of action that I or should be run up into a situation that we internally turn education focus on procedure rhetorical focus to debaters still thinking on assumption and backgrounds behind affirmers learning about procedure of war our authorities better take away than learning about how we can avoid nuclear crisis and making our committee into a gaming community creates opportunity to better understand the self-world problems we gotta go 11 and 1 gaming to be something that everyone does because they understand the games to be real solution to the problems the real solution habited I foresee to fix our educational raising rates of democratic participation tackle global cyclical problems like climate change and poverty argument there are most essential human capabilities in order to create the species that need to happen we'll have to overcome the lingering and Carlos guides continue to build hybrid industries and unconventional partnerships of game research and work with engineers and architects and policymakers and executive and plan focused debate disconnects debaters from issues understanding our decision making the process of what he sees necessary to understand why a decision makes sense and creates supportable skills of a social organization arching plan debate debate and traditional concepts of government fiat or vision is called an ABA the fixture of single-minded I say that the sense that what is wants to achieve this, so reform of political side of emphasis upon the concept of policy taking greater state action rationally against the scheme, carrying out policy as a result of genesis of policy execution rather policy problem, so probably aims for the same as the application of human beings slightly for the war. Essentially, we bear in mind the government's effort to detain the theory of the attributes of them and understanding relationship as activities necessary to incorporate for procedure rhetoric into this means the K comes first, August 7, a procedural model could be seen as system and then it means to increase the coupling between the company's procedure rhetoric and exposition the rhetoric is persuasive value would likely increase as well the player does not allow a meaningful unless listening, and thinking not much of meaningful speaking, maximizing all three designers to optimize expression, understand the relationship between the theory and offer clues into a rhetorical structure of a perception argument. We control the unique. We'll always see good ideas as persuasive as well. We focus on quantification. This wide debate is the state is everything is saturated. We all focus on the purpose of understanding good ideas. By the anti topics dominated by unrealistic estimates and drilling on purpose that found duty faith. Why consider they didn't do anything. Video games are the only media for discussing not corrupted by politics as well as 6. The central government, the contemporary politics, is breathing new life and otherwise make our politics so they're the because it is assumed language and the character natures of public little pressure the moral conceptions such that honorable written political audit and the substance most people don't even know. They have considered as perhaps the most promising future political world of video games will serve that would help us to take on precisely time video games are a medium of mass across many ages, Democrats, and stuff that other matters like the hits and vision for harder. Take other political actions effectively colonize media with video games remain indefinite about the political benefit. Video games that might offer the most solid logic for discussion of how we think about political problems. Spectatorship, GA, folks on procedure towards the key to understand moral dilemmas, narrative-based approaches, planning creates a false understanding where the individual choose with villainous approaches. Rule 13. The second world is important for immersion and decision-making competency. The simplest video games depend far more to the video of the real thought experience. Video games will put how to resolve the thought experience of the engaging factors. And this is an spectator that is still similarly called scientific calculates the less way to get thought experience to add depth to disseminate experience by presently cost players of Bioshock players in recurrent world dilemma whether rescue little sister harvest or bodies for Adam's game makes the evil course of action more tempting than the narrative of the experience because it makes every player control characters more powerful. On to the perm debate. On Prime Planet, non-mutually exclusive leaves you. This will leave you nothing. They say you shouldn't have to defend the status quo. The debate, just the affirmative power. But the affirmative embraces this form of style, and they are still with the one you see they gave. Our links are specific to the affirmative. We required to do a bunch of work on this, and the alternate mutually exclusive. You can't reinforce status quo debate and reform debate and persuasive game. Affirming is based on how the one you see approaches debate and high political problems. And can't come start the debating procedure referred is key to matching alternatives. There are new liberalism, Revan 12. The video games highly commons is the beginning of the reforms of critique, which is speed and equality, and accuracy is delivered by advertising the many commercialized MJs for what are the keys to the dawning neoliberal age of the games that activated multiple some utopian do, but by the world is which they realize they disrupt and dedicate this sort of abstraction, race and sexuality, gender, which they afflict respective genres and analogy, thinking and thought, and critiquing those references necessary. The first step of clearing our digital labor is our own video games. Let's break loose from the planet of vision, first sounds of neoliberalism and clumps of possible, no matter how late or transfer the world system capital, we're very free human beings. And third, August car from the one and see applies to whenever quantification is possible. It's always chosen and preferred as measures as a sense of privilege. When August campaign again was analyzed, the success of the analysis was measured by metric reviews rather than the discussion created. This means the residual link was overwhelmed, and fermentation serves out the affirmatives from this voting issue because it makes the half a moving target to the affirmatives that they have to defend the person the one you see vote negative resource critical thinking skills of extinction DA, including the affirmative. It makes the debate no game and empire that reinforced empire dire worth of individual 2009 consider capital is going to get adopted in economic class of practice and management techniques. The recent emphasis of the report of perspective American global powers as a double nation trying to stay perspective of creative industry my own profit say time they give instruments for producing and reproducing the possible for players and equality of women and new games mark the card. They're moving on to the they say. I say that they don't from. They say from the K. However, this severance made the analysis of above strategy skewed, not knowing what their plan is to make it possible. Negative form of computer strategy kills ground and destroys discipline and education.
Mind if I run to the restroom real quick? You can get it.
Which one of these did you put stuff on a flash drive? Or yes, no? Okay. I guess
There's like an RCN flash drive over there that you might have put on that.
there's a flash drive right there. I think maybe there's one right here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll find out. Ricardo pointed like to do something. I think it was to get stuff on a flash drive.
What do you guys say on the app?
Metal Gear Solid 4.
What?
Metal Gear Solid 4.
Cool.
That's on here.
What does that mean? I know
It's
like a game. So
It's
like,
pretty. We should examine the procedure for its work in Metal Gear Solid 4 and embrace the values that exist within it.
What are the values? More just out of academic curiosity.
Anti-neoliberalism, mostly.
Alright.
Oh, we need
What?
we need Andy before.
Yeah, I figured
Yes.
the person speaking would be important.
Okay.
You give up? Putting it upside down.
Okay.
It's the 2AC order.
The structure of the debate. What? I thought I was supposed to break that in the 2MC. There we go. Oh, sorry. Here.
Anybody not ready? Wait, you good? Okay.
A couple of important framing arguments. Ace of point, time constraints are inevitable, which means that's the reason we can't have a 3-hour discussion of drone policy. B sub point is that their K is functionally your F didn't explain everything as well as it could have. That is not an offensive reason why the F is good. That's just a reason why it might not be as good as it should be. That is not a reason you should vote on presumption. That's a reason why the permutation definitely solves the shit out of this criticism. The framework debate the role of ads seem like the enacted plan any alternative framework with 9 minutes of the 1AC and can logically shift infinitely with kills clash undermines decision making skills. That's uniquely true in the context of their framework because the goalpost can always move based on shit, can always shift based on arbitrary interpretation of what is persuasive debate over the plan is good. It inculcates information processing cost benefit analysis which are necessary for making decisions in all aspects of life. That starts Steinberg and solves the K because it allows us to challenge down power structure so there's no external impact there. Interpretation is not competitive. You can evaluate the procedural record of the 1AC and still weigh the plan. The permutation obviously is just subsume all this because it disproves specificity. Prefer specificity simulation about war powers is uniquely empowering. Down to 13 recommendations based on contingent action. The national security part of the information environment, the ability to deal with chaos and camp, the difficulty engaged in the fact finding, underdog problem solving, skill free activity, problem solving, anxiety, and the accumulation of router tool, and how to leverage skills. We don't think it provides stasis for the law required to move a legal system forward. The ability to recognize problems, argument, test conclusion, analyze information, the critical thinking is a goal of higher education with the capacity to engage in critical thought. The in these pressure becomes particularly important from a pedagogical perspective. Thinking through simulation, the attorneys may face to address the simulation that will confront them. The lawyers must be able to engage in the continuous self-learning and improve their performance to vital for future. So this gives us the ability to create the conditions of learning. It's not unpredictability is not inevitable because the plan solves it. That's our internal link is based on substantive education is important, but we access that based on decision making. Role of the ballot is impact. The role of the ballot is impact turned by the affirmative, or at least is the very least is subsumed VTL. The value life is inevitable because the intrinsic value is inevitable because of the ballot. That was 2NC cross. Their clawed evidence is obviously we know we're not the United States government. We obviously know that's not how the debate function, but it's still a useful exercise in learning to understand decision making processes. The plan focus is not bad. There's no warrant or why disconnections from advocacy. If anything, the Donahue evidence disproves of those arguments. Disproves all those arguments anyway. The impact term, Impact turn, the link debate arguments don't make any sense. You should air neg or air af on these questions. The AF is not as good as it claims to be. That in no way disproves the affirmative. The AFs can. The AF is persuasive. Drones are good because nuclear war is bad, which just proves how tautological this case in the first place. Flowcharts is obviously a reductionist understanding of 1AC. Just because Ricardo doesn't like it doesn't mean that is how everyone understands. Which proves the debate itself is a subjective exercise. Their Anderson evidence does. Their reading of the Anderson doesn't disprove the AF. It's just a reason why there should be a counter plan, which is what is their bad, not is their bad, not ours. The simulations are their simulation is obvious, not lame. Their flowchart is obviously a simplistic understanding. I just as easily say that K is just that procedural understandings are bad. Flowchart equals extinct. It just proves how arbitrary all of this is to begin with. Being negative gives you the choice not to vote F, which solves all the reason of the forced choice arguments. The impact of the permutation debate. They solve the entirety. Actually, impact debate. Sorry. They see ecological spillover, no impact. This is the only external impact. Where Brook 13 global tipping points are named probable shifting to biospheres, gradual sweep of ecosystems, different kinds of strong, like connected organs, eliminated by oceans, migration, response of ecosystem, human ratio different between locations. Their versus ecosystems are concentrated gradually. We're changed without a tape later creatures. The idea of polygonary tipping points is real Hollywood disaster blockbuster claiming we are approaching a planetary boundary is not upheld by science. Racial points are unlikely to translate planet-wide ecosystems are not connected. Global scale civilian casualties are low from Jones relative to any alternative CT measure proves the AF is an impact turbine. The 13 strikes are carried out remote location, possible rain pit source of verified news reports from local organization rely on numbers doctored by the government, by military group. The U.S. media draws on faulty reporting systems are inflated of the true number. On the ground reporting efforts concluded drugs are killing fewer civilians. The unfavorable estimates is lower than other forms of life. Value in life is inevitable. The torture evidence says that there's an ontological core that you can't awake any interpretation contrary to that denies humanity, which means we return their value to life. Arguments the permutation debate. You should the plan to play non-mutual parts of the alternative. Your K describes the social writ large. So alternative solvency overwhelms residual links to the plan. Their distinction is one without a difference. That was the cross-sex debate. Interlinking tradition solves the impact of the K. The net benefits are decision making. The neoliberalism good arguments and the case if the F is overly quantitative, that's an impactor. We have multiple extinction level impacts. They don't have hard one on outweighs the nebulous impacts. The K. They've introduced an alternative reading of the 1AC, which is sufficient to solve their impact. That was all of the 1NC evidence. Solvency links to the K because it injects complexity analysis and non-quantitative methods are preferred. They say it's mutually exclusive, but there's not a card on this argument. Just says that reformism is bad, but doesn't explain why that is true. Their neoliberalism is good. That was functionally not answered. Regards the evidence says that neoliberalism increases the propensity for war, which solves the external impact. That means there's also a conflict discharge with the alternative. Our Norberg evidence says that the market-based economies allow for private donations to solve disease, which evidence has caused extinction at the very least. They can't access it. They can't access a unique risk of offense to the disease argument. Just proves that neoliberalism is good in this instance. What you said? Oh yeah. You should frame this through utilitarian calculus because our evidence indicates that ethical decision-making begs the question of what to what end, which means the only way to compare competing ethical values to evaluate the consequences. There's always they say there's always a metric, but they say there's always a methodological reliance on metrics. If that's true, then the alternative definitely doesn't solve. That doesn't sever. The permutation doesn't sever because we defend the entirety of the 1AC. It's a pick out of the non-mutually exclusive part of the alternative. The extinction you said was impact turn. The other permutation we're not going to test the competition. Not a reason why they can advocate, or not a reason why we advocate. The judge can decide the 1AC versus waste is subjective. It's subjective. Any risk the judge was mildly entertained solves the K disproves the stupidity of their framework arguments. Nuclear war turns the environment. It destroys carrying capacity, and obviously we access it internally to the right. Any risk, their lack of case defense means that any risk at the AF is an impact turn as a try or die for an affirmative ballot.
The AF is in a flowchart. In-depth look at the policy.
I'm just going to go through this. The AF is not a flowchart. It is a discussion of the policy. They have reduced it to that because they don't have card one on the internal link debate. All of our evidence is compiled by experts and say that in the context of the United States drone policy, it's necessary and sufficient to limit force strikes outside of zones of active hostilities to...
You're personally engaged with that through a ton of research.
We have personally engaged with all that through a ton of research. Their interpretation denies us our subjective interpretation of debate.
They can't solve alternative methods of debate because there's a ballot.
Yeah, they can't solve alternative methods of debate because there's a ballot, which means all of their impacts are inevitable.
Try to be organized here.
Yep.
There will be an overview. Otherwise, straight down. I'll try to let you know where I am. I guess I'll use this right now. Ready? When you're making a decision at the end of this debate, it's not a question of whether or not the plan is desirable, but why is the plan desirable? Approaching the question desirably from framing impacts is whatever Rigo Stanton's criticized. It creates a false focus on labels and false figures. This is what he talks about when he shows statistics that say his game on the Howard Dean campaign failed, but procedural rhetoric would say it succeeded because it created discussions about the game. Debates should create discussions about drone policies, not why they might lead to nuclear war, but why those specific drone policies. We're not necessarily saying you have to talk about every EnMc drone policy, but I should at least be inspired to bring to start a debate about what the best solution to the current drone policy and how it works. I should learn from this debate. From this debate how drone policy works, not how it avoids nuclear wars or how it avoids certain types of miscalculations, which is what our scenario is talking about. Debating the status quo only focuses on impacts. Last year we learned about why SMRs are good because they avoid certain types of conflicts. We don't learn about how desalination works and how it might create dead zones because that process itself is inherent. The process itself inherently maximizes stability. We don't learn about how fission we didn't learn about how fission reaction works. This can be applied to this year's topic because when we focus on what these drones might do and how they could affect parts of the world, we ignore what Obama's decision could be, which would probably be just to ignore the anyway. You vote negative because you believe that this is a better form of education and leads to better decision making. Go to the framework debate. The role values to analyze procedures behind the affirmative, meaning that you focus on the internal link before you focus on the impact. If you think that the internal link, if you think that the internal link is unacceptable or too oversimplified, you vote negative because the affirmative is not a good idea or undesirable. We're proving that their simulation. We're not saying their simulation could be better. We're saying that their simulation is bad because it creates a false focus. There's a few reasons to prefer this. One is better decision making. When you model it from video games, you see decisions like you see in BioShock to kill the little sister in order to gain benefits. You see the benefits you gain where you might not see the benefits necessarily see the benefits of striking with the drone because the affirmative completely assumes that that's not an issue. This is one of the simplifying assumptions that you reject. Also, there's a second argument they can see this better policy making because it creates a safe space for discussion. Video games are the only area that's not corrupted by empire or other forms of capitalism. Means it's the only external way. Modeling debate after a video game leads us to look at a simplifying assumption, leads us to think in different ways. They say it moves at 9 minutes to 1. See, there's no impact to fairness, prefer our impact to education because it leads to more portable skills and leads us to understand why we make decisions in this verse. They say Donahue evidence. We're pretty sure the Donahue evidence flows negative. That the decision making that we get from games is from more complex simulations that aren't focused on means but are focused on analyzing discussions that are created by that simulation. Go to the impact debate. We are an extinction impact. We're an extinction impact. I'm pretty sure they don't get to read new impact defense in the 1AR because this was a 1NC impact. They had plenty of opportunity to read in the 2AC. This type of sandbagging is a voting issue because it's skews negative strategy. The negative block. The negative block is the only place where we can determine strategy. Protect my 2 and R because it's the much more time constrained speech and having to answer arguments like impact defense rather than focusing on conceded portions of the impact. Debate creates less retreat. If it's true that we should focus on impacts, then we probably outweigh because we have large magnitude. They concede my magnitude first framing. It's not just ecological collapse. It's through domination, resource depletion, and diseases. All these lead to war and turn their impacts because most of them are based off of these resource sources. Nuclear war doesn't turn the nuclear war doesn't turn the environment because A, it has such a low probability. You should reject it.
and B, we'd be able to focus on areas that survive ecological collapses and higher probability of leading to extinction because we run out of ways to sustain our lives. Go to the link debate. We'll isolate a few key arguments. One is that the app's blackmailing you with a loaded choice rather than engaging in discussion. The affirmative should engage in both discussions and create an option. The negative should be able to focus on these assumptions of these discussion and point out why those are bad. This leads to debaters thinking like engineers rather than policymakers and thinking of the better solution. Arguments for our vision for debate is good because it creates a different form of thinking. That form of thinking leads to more portable decision making. Also, the app ignores what their experts recommend. We point out a few portions of their solvency evidence that create more recommendations than what their experts talk about, which is another scenario where they could have created a more complex simulation but decided not to, because they wanted to simplify it and get to where as quickly as possible. 3, I already talked about simplifying assumption. The permutation doesn't really work because we read a piece of ghost evidence that anytime quantification is present, we always prefer it because it's the most simplified function. I know it's most simplifying. I know it's difficult to envision debate with time constraints. Looking at internal links, but we always innovate to time constraints. That's why we speak faster. That's why we develop more efficient jargon. That's another innovation that we can get to, meaning that we solve a lot of their time constraints. This said, the only other argument I have here is that you should vote app because you think the app's persuasive. I don't think the app's persuasive because it skips a few steps, makes a few simplifying assumptions that are just not true, and creates a rhetoric that is false and focuses on ends like impacts. It focuses on ends of nuke extinction impacts and creates success based off of that. If you agree with me, vote negative.
Which card says that quantification being present means we can never overcome that?
That was in the 1R. If you control F, thus the imps of...
The 1 and Z card?
It might be in the 1 and Z, sorry.
Okay, so that card though.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, the imps of numerical proof rear their own head. Is...
Cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a promising argument, but we need to do more.
They can't abolish that standard. It's hardwired into debate tournaments and a necessary tradition in order to create an incentive for people to debate. They have no workable alternative conception of debate since they can't change this basic incentive structure. There's a reason that debate is what it is, and it is developed the way that it has because people found speaking faster and bigger impacts as being more strategic. If they can't change that fundamental incentive structure, then the alternative fails since people will always revert to that structure. The cross-ex of the 2NC, where I took a full extra minute, was pretty indicative of this and pretty important because the things that he was describing really sounded like they ended up being counterplans and disads, which are very similar to what debate is now. They are functionally not a change, but they just want to be able to stand back and try to poke a few holes in the app and say, hey, video games, vote neg. This is a terrible standard. Disads and counterplans are better in-depth explanations based off of hundreds of hours of research of which policy is best and why. Our conception of debate is the best middle ground since we gain the in-depth engineer-type education when we do the research and have in-depth discussions in the squad room about arguments. You're on the same team as D-Height, and that dude knows a shit ton about every policy that he researches, and so do people like Ellis, because they've done the in-depth research and thought through the arguments in exactly the way that Ricardo wants, but his conception is trying to map that onto a debate, which is impossible for the reasons above. I could talk to you for hours about drone policy based off of all the research that we've done. I can also explain to you how nuclear desalination works because of the research that I did last year on SMRs, despite the impacts, which disproves the entire point of the K. They just decided not to get into the nitty-gritty and stand back and critique everything, which is the worst form of debate. Doing counterblends and disads despite the impact structure is a way better interpretation of debate. The answer to their blackmail arguments is that everything results in an impact. It's just a question of how big that impact is. Their distinction is arbitrary since they have their own education impacts that are to an extent quantifiable. How much education do we get? How do we evaluate those competing claims? They claim theirs is better. We claim ours is better. How do you synthesize that? An environment impact versus a nuclear war impact. How do you synthesize that? We proclaim, based off of the utilitarianism arguments that have been conceded, that you have to evaluate the number of people that have died. Yes, it's a statistic, but statistics are around because they're efficient and they work. It's the only non-arbitrary way to evaluate competing claims, and extinction outweighs, which means that you go affirmative. The second main standard is that their standard is impossible and skewed way too far towards the negative. They've poked maybe a few holes in the app, but haven't disproves in the basic thesis of the app, even if it is a bit flowcharty. Our evidence is very qualified and goes in-depth into the policy. The K could be just as flowcharty. K is Sims bad because no edu and kills the environment. It is the exact same thing as the app, which is a distinction that they can't get out of. Framework debate. The role of the ballot is to simulate the enactment of the plan. Any alternative framework includes 9 minutes of the 1AC and can logically shift infinitely, which kills clash and undermines decision-making skills. They've conceded the impact of decision-making skills as the only thing that we get out of debate, regardless of our personal interaction, because that's impossible to know. The Steinberg evidence says it helps us with every decision that we make later in life, which means that you should default towards evaluating the different portions of the plan. Even if debate is inevitably somewhat unfair, you should try to minimize that by creating at least equal beginnings of debate. Debate over the plan is good. It inculcates information processing and cost-benefit analysis, which are necessary to making decisions. That was above. They make an argument that you should evaluate the internal links. You are evaluating the internal links. You evaluate those based off of the endpoint that they get to. If you don't like our endpoints, evaluate the internal link of the app because the internal link works. The plan makes drones policy better, which they have not answered, which should be the framing issue. Their video game simulation is extremely stupid since Bioshocks are not debate. We understand that civilian casualties are an issue. So is the lack of norms and drone proliferation. We claim to solve those by implementing a policy that may not be perfect, but it's at least better than any alternative that has been presented, since they have not presented an alternative. Perm to the plan and all non-unity exclusive parts of the alternative. Their K describes the social writ large, so all solvency overwhelms residual links to the plan. Their distinction is one without a difference. That was cross-links. The internal link introduction solves the impact and proves their model of debate is indistinct. The best debates result in a counterplan which questions the best method of debate and a dissad that says why that's better, which is an in-depth explanation of the policy, and they should have done when they were negative. The net benefits are decision-making, cap good, and the case, most of which is graph. Capitalism resolves war war, which was an argument that was not answered, which also turns the environment. If we win the probability argument, Civilians conceded, then it's definitely good. It's definitely good enough. They've conceded scenarios for extinction that they have no defense to. Drone Polo causes war in the South China Sea, and terrorists initiated a nuclear attack against the U.S., which escalates to war with Russia. The K has the same impacts like ecological collapse and resource shortage, which means that everything links back to them. If they resolve the totality of these things, and so does the permutation. They've also introduced an alternative reading of the 1AC, which is insufficient to solve their impact. This is important since they don't have an offensive reason for voting nay other than the environment, which proves that the judge can still say the AF is violently interesting and persuasive and vote AF. The 2NR spends 10 seconds, so the permutation has no explanation of why quantification always overcomes the alternative analysis. There is also no explanation of how the AF would solve it, so it's inevitable. If not, the perm solves it quickly. The environment defense was not new. It was a new articulation of a new impact of the block. Nuclear war turns it because war would just destroy the environment. Empirically proven. Environmental collapse will not happen. Species spillovers disproven. Multiple different ecosystems. Their impact is the one that structures.
I wish we had squad rooms.
Our squad room sucks, so it's all good.
You have one? Coaches, you know.
Forcing them to have to defend like an intrinsic benefit to the way we go about debating. And so I think there could have been a little bit more done that, like, yes, even if research does help us to do that, there's still no value to the way we currently present our plans in debate or something like that. I think maybe if the argument is spun and framed in that way, you could kind of co-opt this, like we would still do research under our way the debate would be framed. It's just that the way we present it would be a little bit different. I mean, as well as I think that you all need to be stressing a little bit more to be safe. There is a benefit to the way we do simulations that is intrinsic that does have some value rather than kind of like running to the, well, we do some research so we still know stuff kind of thing. I think that a larger problem though, and it's more towards like the way that I guess I'm more persuaded when people read K's in front of me, is that the 2NC, I think you spent like an enormous amount of time trying to explain the K to me and very little time indicting the AF. And I find that I end up voting for the K more when a lot of time is done developing link arguments, indicting so the 2NC is almost just a rant about why the case is dumb, and kind of doing that. That's a lot more persuasive to me when judging K debates, and the more you can like shift the debate away from having to explain your argument and just kind of like talking about why there are flaws and what they've done is beneficial. Whereas I think the 2NC, there's just like a few brief moments where you're like, hey, the AF's not so hot. I think there needs to be a lot more of here are some fundamental problems with the way they construct the 1AC. Here are the holes in their logic. Here's why the lines don't match up, and things like that. And I think that that's what largely was missing. They weren't on the defensive about having to defend their AF, I think, as much as they needed to be. And in the end, I wasn't even sure what was wrong with it still. And that's kind of, I think, the problem that needed to be resolved. Some suggestions that I had, like maybe, of how you could have gone to do it. I thought that the moments where you were like, the AF is geared towards reducing civilian casualties, whereas we should have like a zero tolerance policy for civilian casualties or something. Maybe find some way to develop that a little bit more. Maybe make some arguments like try to sneak in a little counterplan that's like maybe a precautionary principle type attitude towards drone strike policy would be a more appropriate way of doing things like that, to where we wouldn't drone strike ever, rather than having like a very lax policy like the AF would endorse, that would still allow us to use it quite frequently. I voted against the Georgetown team reading the same AF round one, and some of the link arguments that were developed in that round were like, what is the definition of hostilities? That would be manipulated. Like, obviously, the PKK is involved in hostilities, so Turkey could easily use these rules to circumvent and kind of do those kinds of things. And it was just really like a big circumvention debate about how the AF could be manipulated in ways to like still let China and Turkey pretty much do what they want and that I think you could interact with your disposable populations type arguments, and kind of do some more work there that I think would be persuasive, and maybe force the app to do a little bit more work in defending the app.
Right.
Finding ways to sneak in like little counter plans, like he was saying, like you pointed out some great counter plans in our solvency literature. You should have read them. I think you probably could still find some ways to like drop little pickish type arguments on the K that would maybe make the 1AR's life nightmarish if you were to exploit those a little bit more.
Like, when I'm analyzing this, I'll be like, here's some things that their authors say we should also do. Analyzing procedural rhetoric means we do those. Would that be a way to sneak it in?
Just say like something like, instead of doing the plan, then why is this not our policy?
Oh, okay.
And then suddenly that's like a counterplan the 1AR has to do some defense against, right? Probably getting into the danger zone of floating pickish type stuff, but you're probably going to have to do a little bit of that. So.
Anyways, yeah, definitely. Okay. Do you think that framing this as a sort of counterplan where we present a simulation that would show that the app is desirable would be a way to go about this instead of having that way we have the alternative? Or
possibly.
Okay.
I also think that you should maybe be making some. I think you do need to like do some kind of defense of like the way the 1AC is structured is bad. It's like the min-max, high impact. Like you've got that kind of stuff built in, but you need to talk about why that leads to flawed decision making.
Yeah.
And maybe on the judge's part that like the way we present arguments to the judge leads to the judge making bad decisions. So like always avoid the biggest impact and things like that. Whereas we should be concerned about civilian casualties a lot more than we are like what China's going to do with their policy. Like you should be more concerned about the little kid who gets blown up because there's like some strafe like from the drone missile that we do than like the consequences of what another country will think about how we do.
I might have asked you a quick question about that. From our perspective, if we were to say that like would it be persuasive if we were to say something like, if those things are true and we should value them more, then you should be able to beat the advantages? Like, does that argument make sense to you?
I mean, well, I think that you've got some arguments built in for like why you make our drone policy better or whatever that maybe gives you some leverage against that. Or, like, and then you need to fall back on like inevitability arguments and
a little bit more persuasive to defend our simulation a little bit better. Like the reason the debate is like this is because there's incentives that lead us to run to the biggest.
You're definitely good on there's an incentive that encourages this type of thing.
Right, but then the argument is that like that proves that it's the best model of debate because it's the one that the debate community has chosen at large.
I don't think that's necessarily true. Like, then it's potentially like a cognitive dissonance issue. Like we've gotten stuck into a pattern where we do things even though it's stupid. Like none of us thinks that most of these advantages or disadvantages we talk about is real, but we still continue to do it.
Like, so then I guess the next level argument that I probably should have got a little more into is just like we use the advantages as like a heuristic for learning how to.
Right. That's why I said originally like you need an argument for why the way that we simulate is beneficial, independent. Like not like even if it's like not perfect, but like even if it's complete bullshit, just the act of simulation itself teaches us how to make decisions independent of that. And so even if it's all like fantasy land, made up, completely detached from reality, there's still a benefit to it.
And did you think that there was some of that in 2AR, or there just should have been more of that?
There should have been more.
Okay. Okay.
Other question. I'm just trying to think of different ways I can package this argument. Do you think it would be a good approach to package this with a lot of internal link takeouts, with a lot of what you're talking about, but like throwing them on case, maybe throwing some of these cards about what they ignore, etc., or do you think it's better to include that into NC analysis of the link debate?
I think it may help you to have carded arguments on the case, but I don't know that it's necessary.
Okay.
Like, if you make smart, logical arguments about why the app is stupid, I don't necessarily think you need a piece of evidence for it. And usually I find it's more likely to be dropped by the affirmative if you don't have a piece of evidence for it. You're just like, and then usually they ask, like, we have cards.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, but you don't have cards that answer this, like, pretty good argument. And so you got to make that decision. Like, what is a good enough argument that where they're good enough that you need somebody qualified saying, no, that's not true, and what can you get by with just like, here's a smart
argument,
analytical argument.
Okay. Fair enough. And do you think the block division makes sense in this context?
Yeah, I think
am I taking too much?
You
Am I
still
too
want you still want the 1NR to be techie on the perm debate and like the framework debate, but the 2NC I think needs to be a little bit more like ranty and leaky, more so than like I'm going to explain this like intricate K argument we've developed. You need to be I'm going to explain why the app is dumb.
And
and I think that you're in a much better spot coming out of the block.
All right. Cool. You have any questions? All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for jumping in. Yeah.
Good luck. It's nice seeing you.
Yeah, man.
Haven't seen you in a while.
I know, right?
I've been to Georgetown. They didn't ask for me. I heard there's a need for me over there, though.
Yes.
How'd you guys do?
Yes, my right. Yep. We got pulled up, so we debated the 3-0. But basically, he worked one off. Renegade 2NC.
They read right.
They
read
religious church.
No, like church would need like the investigation of CIA assassination.
Oh, that kind of
and they're like, this makes gross moral sense. And we're like, what?
It's like a